And the markets are changing, the distribution channels are changing, the brands are changing, right? Historically, you've got the big names. Now you've got really powerful direct-to-consumer brands, and they're on a whole other trajectory. They move much faster, they're a lot more agile. They might be small today, but they've got big plans, and there's a lot of momentum behind those.
Welcome to Hero Inside, the Ingredient Branding Podcast with Tomas Vučurović. In each episode, Tomas will draw from his vast experience as the go-to global ingredient branding expert, and will discuss this subject with visionaries and pioneers in the field. How do you go from the zero position as a supplier of a new ingredient to the hero position in demand around the world? Let's find out.
Welcome to episode 10 of the Hero Inside Ingredient Branding Podcast. My name is Tomas Vučurović and I am your host. Today I am thrilled to have Marcus Hoenig and Alex Yellowley join us, two real trailblazers in ingredient branding. Marcus brings a very personal narrative into the mix, driving forward innovation, sustainability, and inclusivity. Together with Alex, they have history in contributing to the success of the D3O ingredient brand and then founding RE ZRO, a new ingredient brand revolutionizing impact protection with sustainable and innovative materials. Their products cater to high adrenaline and high-risk sports, including motorsports, snow sports, and cycling. In this episode, we'll dive into their journeys and explore the rapid development of their brand. Let's dive in. Marcus, Alex, great to have you here today. Your work in the sports tech industry and your journey as entrepreneurs have been truly inspiring, and many people have recommended you to be guests in my podcast. So I'm looking forward to give your stories the well-deserved space today. But before we dive into the recent success you realized with RE ZRO, we maybe start with something profound that shapes also how you view life and business. Let's therefore start with Marcus. Marcus, you recently started to openly discuss the challenge of living with MS and MND. And you are handling this with admirable openness and also public advocacy for inclusion. Do you want to share how your life is at the moment, how it has changed, and how it is also influencing your entrepreneurial path?
Thanks a lot, Thomas. First of all, thank you to you and the rest of the team for setting this up. It's a great opportunity, and I'm really excited about geeking out a little bit around ingredient branding with you. I think together we've got 30 plus years combined experience in this space, so really excited for this opportunity. Thank you. Yeah, so startups, ingredient branding has been running in my sort of veins for the last 30 years, and as I'm sure you know, and many of the audience know, the startup world is pretty. Yeah, you need quite a bit of grit and determination. And yeah, part of this, I've been dealing with multiple sclerosis, and then more recently, motor neuron, which has been a bit of a blow. And I've had to dig deep, reinvent myself, and as I call it, rewire my brain a little bit. You kind of need to look at things from a different angle, understand how to reapply your skills, and how you can contribute in this world of startups in the sports tech industry. So it's taken quite a while, but I'm very grateful because I've got an amazing team around me, and really it comes down to the people that you surround yourself with. That's kind of where I come from, and if you can sort of take it on and have the right people with you on that journey, it's possible. And I'm really proud to say that today, with Alex and Will and some other ventures that I'm involved in, we're able to take it on and really apply different ways of working with each other, understanding our different strengths and how we harness that together. So yeah, thank you for letting me sort of introduce myself on that note. It doesn't define me, but as you can probably hear from my breathing, I do get a croaky voice sometimes and tend to sound like Darth Vader. So please bear with me. And it's all part of the new me. But I'm excited to discussing further with you today, Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus, for sharing this very personal content with us. So let's bring then one of your co-inventors and co-partners into this, Alex. Please also give us quickly your background and how did you two run into each other?
Yeah, hi Thomas, and thanks for having me on here. So my background was a little bit more varied. I didn't really come from the ingredient tech space originally. But I came to work at D3O many years ago, which was when I first met Marcus. I kind of came across D3O because I was an avid snowboarder, and there was a job going. It was in my hometown in Brighton back in the day, went for a job role. Got interviewed by Marcus when was that, Marcus? That would have been 2012, maybe something like that.
Yeah, 2012.
2012, and I didn't get the job. So I was told I didn't have enough experience at the time, so go away, come back, and get back in touch. So I did exactly that. A couple of years later, I went and did some other stuff. Came back, and Marcus was building what we called the Advanced Concepts team at the time, which was like a new extension of the business development team to start kind of exploring new avenues, new angles for the business. We both started working together in 2014 at D3O.
Super. As you guys are in this impact protection, impact technology, so before talking about D3O and RE ZRO, maybe if you can just quickly explain to our users what kind of products these are, at least for the ones who don't know the companies that you're working with. So what are you guys actually doing?
D3O and RE ZRO are both impact technologies, so born out of the sort of sports and motorsports space, where obviously people are doing some pretty aggressive activities and they need better protection. So we kind of cut our teeth in that space. D3O kind of emerged as a new sort of player in that space, and really kind of built the ingredient branding model that we'd seen with companies like Gore-Tex, but into body protection. So RE ZRO now, we do very similar work with a slightly different twist, but we provide body protection solutions that get integrated into brands' garments or protective gear that they then use and provide to athletes and sports people around the world.
So you both worked first at D3O. Marcus, you were there at the very launch and shaped that brand for nearly a decade. Alex, you joined later. So what were some of the key takeaways on how to grow a successful ingredient brand that you could take with you out of that time? What strategic decisions or moments were key for your success there?
I mean, I think one of the first things that you have to consider in this space and that you have to bring as an ingredient technology is innovation. Fundamentally, that's the core purpose. And that's why brands are buying into what ingredient technologies are providing. So I think, Marcus can talk to this in a bit more detail about the early days at D3O, but that was, what they brought. They brought the first soft, flexible protection to the market and built a brand around that. And so that innovation really started to kind of disrupt the space.
Yeah, and if I can jump in a little bit. So when I first joined D3O, this was in its very early stages, as Alex said. Innovation is obviously at its very core, and that's the first thing. But then I think where D3O really stood out and where a lot of the ingredient brands, that we see today have evolved into is around the sort of storytelling that comes along with it. And the way that D3O engaged with its audience, even with the press, with the markets, it really sort of resonated amongst that space. I still remember when I first, I wasn't really a brand guy. And when I first did my interview at D3O and I saw the orange cables, like for the computer cables, the orange shovels. So this whole sort of association around the brand and the storytelling behind it was very powerful. And I think that's where it all started. And then from that, and the thing that, I'd like to touch on a little bit with you, Thomas, as well, is just how ingredient brands have evolved since then. In the early stages, we supplied components But then very quickly we realized that we had to adapt and be agile. The market was changing. The distribution channels are changing, opening up new applications. So there's a lot of momentum that has to go into where that technology can go and how we can continue to innovate for our clients. So it's a sort of evolution. But yeah, at first, the storytelling, the innovation was sort of the foundation, and then we have to evolve with the markets and with the trends that take place.
And I think some of the other things that, then were brought into play are still things that we learn from today. And I think you see across the board with ingredient technologies, which is building strong and brand guidelines and sticking to them. Incredibly strong collaborative marketing campaigns with brand partners, and also working on kind of the consumer education piece as well. A lot of this technology is new for consumers, and so it's important to then build on that, to give them bite-sized information that they can learn and start to understand why the technology is important to them and why they should be buying gear that includes it.
Great. Thanks, Alex, for that additional clarification. I think we will talk about that a little bit more when we move over to RE ZRO in a second. But coming back, Marcus, to your point on the evolution. So this D3O, this first flexible protection, fits in this first generation ingredient brands, as we defined it in our generational model. So starting with Cordura and nylon in the 1920s and 30s. These were products or materials that made products better. So it made the product, their target was to improve the performance of the products of their customers. And then in let's say the beginning of the 2000s, we saw the upcoming of sustainability and the need also to make products that are not only better performing, but they are also better to the environment. And I think that is something that is now going with you as you moved into new endeavors and both co-founded RE ZRO. So was that also an inspiration for that move to say, okay, we're going to add something to that product performance by also adding environmental performance?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, there was definitely, in the sort of an evolution that I saw, and everything from where D3O started as a sort of component supplier to where it is today, where it's almost a licensing model, right, where we supply raw materials because of certain markets, but then sort of taking that to the next level, to be able to, well, it's just a key element for an ingredient brand to always be able to bring something new as a sort of extension to the teams. And so sustainability for us was very clear that it was something that we wanted to, Alex and I wanted to push through and drive that change. And so when our third partner, Will, came to us with that sort of vision, and his background is in materials, we knew that this was really something that we could take on to drive that change. It's something that was very important to us, to be able to come with something different, but also something that's meaningful to the market, and something where we can, hopefully lead that change in a space which it's the chemical industry, so it's quite dirty. But look, it's all about taking small steps and trying to make small improvements and continuously pushing that forward.
I want to stay a little bit to the topic of sustainability. It is, with your new material at the core of RE ZRO's operations, but we are also, since maybe 12 months, 18 months, in a market situation that I and others describe as a sustainability recession. We see there's, a lot of startups also struggling getting those the materials through, and what we can see is that the brands now changed a little bit their demands and their strategy.
Thomas, I think we realized sort of early on when we started RE ZRO that, sustainability couldn't be shoehorned in at the cost of performance, especially in our market. All of our products are certified, so they have to be tested and meet certain criteria to ensure that they are performing and that they are safe to use. You want to make sure that whatever products you're providing to people are going to protect them in the endeavors that they're going after. So whether that's, riding on a motorbike, throwing themselves down a mountain on a bike or on a snowboard. It doesn't matter. There's a certain performance requirement that is a bare minimum in order to be able to sell in these markets. And that's why when we partnered with Will, we thought we had an opportunity to do things a bit differently, because he'd been working on another material for a few years called Tototoa that sort of helps to optimize certain plastic groups to make them bioavailable to microorganisms. And so that's kind of where it all started, really. But I think, the feeling we get from the market generally is, I would say, overall optimistic towards sustainability goals. I don't think anyone's naive enough to think that we're going to have all the answers or to be able to achieve everything overnight. But, I think overall there's positivity in my opinion.
Good to hear. We need a little bit more optimism in the market at these days. When I look at ReZero from the outside, and we meet each other regularly at trade shows, and I know most of your team since years, I was generally impressed. But what I'm most impressed with is actually the speed. What are the factors that have accelerated your market entry and growth story?
That's a really interesting topic, Thomas. Yeah. I mean, on the spot, I think that one of the main things is probably comes down to our background. So we've got a really interesting, broad range of backgrounds within the team. So that's something that I think that every startup, and also as an ingredient brand, should really look at, is just the reach and the experience of that team. And for us, we've been very fortunate with, obviously my background building up D3O, so the contacts are there, the understanding of the market is there, strategically how to enter it. That's one thing, but then having Will on board from his materials experience. So I think just the team is going to be very, very important here to sort of understand, how to go to market. And because we understood that market very well, and it was our mission, we kind of pinpointed a few areas, production, materials, brand guideline, everything was sort of all part of how can we improve on what we already know. And I think that's always been something that's been part of us, of sort of the mission that we're on. And yeah, it's sort of coming together quite nicely.
And to add to that, I think, as Marcus said, the kind of doing things better, doing things differently has been very much key to how we've approached all of our problems. I think, in some instances we've had to do things differently because we simply haven't had the budget for it in the early stages. But overall, every time we have a particular challenge, a particular hurdle in front of us, or a particular thing that we need to achieve, we kind of all sit back as a team and think, okay, right, this is how the market has done it. Can we do it a different way? Like, why is it done that way? And that's really helped us to build really solid partnerships. We've got a great team with a wealth of experience, and everyone's kind of driving in that same direction of thinking differently. But on top of that, we also have, through Will's network, amazing manufacturing partners that have been built out of decades of partnership that Will's had with them over the years in different roles. And I think our approach and our attitude to doing things better and doing things differently kind of seems to resonate with everyone in that sort of process within the supply chain, etc., all the way up to our brand partners. So it's really easy to get everyone to kind of buy in at all levels.
That's true, and very valid input from both of you. But you also need to establish supply chain, right? And I think that is where a lot of new materials, and you talked about your new material that you bring in, needs to work on existing machinery, needs to work together with other components and existing materials. So establishing stable supply chains globally, if you are in those different categories in which you are in, is absolutely key to go to market, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And we've been working, very hard with our partners to deliver that. So at the moment, we decided to centralize all of our production in Asia, largely because, we're an ingredient. So we're being integrated into other people's products. So most of those are cut and sew products. It's jackets, it's trousers, it's knee and elbow sleeves. So we want it to be central to where most of that production is, which is still kind of Southeast Asia, China, some in kind of sort of Pakistan and Bangladesh as well, which, is more in sort of the moto market. But doing so kind of, we decided that we wanted to do injection molding because that gave us greater scalability, It also meant that we could use materials that are recyclable and much more easily recyclable. And beyond that, it's a process that's much more easy to move. We talked about obviously the shift in sustainability and the mindsets there, and some of that is going to lead to more and more localized manufacturing. We're already seeing some brands who are bringing manufacturing back into Europe. And so we wanted to be able to align ourselves well with that. And, injection molding is a cleaner process. There's much more injection molding expertise and facilities outside of Asia. And so that kind of set us up well for that as well.
I think another success factor, and I know Marcus is very fond about that, is collaboration. And it seems like collaboration is an integral part of ReZero's strategy. Also, the extensive partnerships that you are having with your brand partners, like very recently, I think Rebel Horn as one of them. So how do these collaborations influence your brand build-up, and how do you approach such strategic brand partnerships? To whom do you talk? How do you select the partner? With whom do you go? That's one of the biggest questions for, let's say, the ingredient brand starters. Who's going to be my first customer? With whom am I going to go into R&D projects so that I'm not, after 2 years, figuring out that the brand's not interested anymore, the team is changing, or they're de-investing. So that can make and break an ingredient brand. How do you handle that?
I mean, for ingredient brands, that's the sort of key element, right? Is understanding, first understanding the markets that you're going after. In impact protection, there's a lot going on here. There's the winter sports, there's the motorcycle, there's even consumer, all the way to consumer electronics, to defense. So really understanding your markets and the sort of seasonalities behind those markets and the sales cycles are very important. So some markets move very fast, like consumer electronics. A new phone launches, and within months, people have to, create the cases behind it. Whereby the defense market is tender driven. So I think understanding the dynamics of each of those markets is probably one of the most important, things that you can bring into, any ingredient brand startup. So having that knowledge is going to be very important. And then, yes, breaking it down within that into understanding who the players are, right? So you've got the local, geographically, you've got the big global brands. Let's take the motorcycle industry. You've got the Alpine Stars and the Dainese, who are big global brands. But then actually, geographically, you can break that down into smaller brands who have a lot of presence and reach within certain countries. So it's a bit of an art. We're lucky enough that we've got a lot of experience within that, so we understand all of those dynamics. And the markets are changing, the distribution channels are changing, the brands are changing, right? Historically, you've got the big names. Now you've got really powerful direct-to-consumer brands, and they're on a whole other sort of trajectory. They move much faster. They're a lot more agile. They might be small today, but they've got big plans, and there's a lot of momentum behind those. There's a lot going on in that question, and it is the key for any sort of ingredient brand to really understand those markets, those dynamics, everything from manufacturing, where do they manufacture, to sales channels, and how much they value what you're doing.
Yeah, to summarize, I would say your first clients are definitely not the biggest market opportunity, but the most committed partners. As you said, Marcus, the ones who really believe in your story and want to become part of that. And out of that, you start to generate a momentum. You start to generate the pull effect on your component, which is also something in ingredient branding, where I again and again meet people who want to enter into ingredient branding, but who are not willing to work on their attractiveness and on their pull. They only want the brand partners to make their ingredient brand known, and they don't understand that it's not going without the other half of the equation. You also have to be attractive. People have to know you, and people have to love you, and people have to demand you in order to establish your ingredient brand, isn't it?
Yeah. And there's the cross-market sort of fertilization as well. That's really important in the sense that you might decide to partner up with a brand in a small market, but it helps build up and create momentum in other markets. So, I'll give an example, but if you can launch into the military, particularly in the impact protection space, for a brand in the motorcycle industry to say, as used in the military, is a huge stamp of approval, let's call it, right? It's like, okay, so understanding which markets are going to create momentum to build up in other markets is also really important. So there's a certain dynamic there that just finding those right partners within different markets helps build up maybe the one sort of sector that you're really aiming to go after in the long run.
You do need to, as Marcus said, have you get a gut feel on the brand. You can see either how they've launched other technologies successfully before, or as Marcus said, you get a feeling from the people and the commitment that they're showing towards what you guys are offering. That's something that you can then sort of start to build on. And all it takes is 2 or 3 good partners that you really position with, regardless of their size. But actually, finding partners like, for example, Ion in the mountain bike space, who've been brilliant for us. Because also a lot of people turn and look at what they're doing because of their past record with their products, their design, their marketing. They really are someone that people watch, and so that's important for us as a partner of theirs as well.
Great, Alex. Thanks a lot. Time flies, guys, so we need to look a little bit into the future. What are the next big steps for ReZero? Are there any market expansions or new technologies on the horizon?
Yeah, we're working on quite a few things. We're trying not to sit on our hands for too long. We talked about innovation being important, so we want to try and stay at the forefront of that. So in the background, we've been playing around with broadening our toolkit that we can offer to brands. So expanding ReZero just from, outside of just the TPE protectors that we're known, but also offering turnkey solutions so brands can look at us for all of the plastics in their protective gear that they're using and replace those with a ReZero story. So that's something we've been working on. And we'll be launching across this year with several partners some of those new materials, so hard shells and comfort foams as well. But we also want to continue to push further in terms of sustainability. So we have several other big projects underway to innovate in that space. One of the things we are looking to launch probably towards the end of this year is a grade of our material that incorporates 50% post-consumer recycler as well. So that's a big step for us. I think we can achieve pretty high percentage of non-ReZero material in our products and still achieve the performance requirements that we need. So that's quite exciting for us as well.
Good. Marcus, I would still have one issue where I would like to get your input, because I know that you have a lot of passion about ingredient branding and the role ingredient brands will play in the future. So from this typical old school material supplier towards much deeper integration into the organizations of your customers, maybe all the way to become their outsourced R&D and product development hub. So where are you heading regarding this?
I certainly started having a bit of a flavor of it when we started at D3O, because as I saw how we changed and had to adapt as we went along and things evolved. And I think ingredient brands really need to kind of have the finger on the pulse and continue to look at how they can really become an extension of their partners and bring something that is kind of like their sort of innovation partner that they can rely on. Let's take motorcycle protection, for example. Motorcycle protection is available to everybody. Everything from sort of commodity materials in China that are very cheap to some more premium ones like D3O. So what can you bring to them that's going to be different, something that they can't source themselves, but also brings them into the future of where protection is going. In our case, we're looking at sustainability, and that's what's driving us. But so we have to always kind of think of where that's going. And I think the more we understand the customer needs and what we can add, where we can add value to them, that's how we, as ingredient brands, we can evolve. And that's a really sort of important thing, because a lot of technology companies might come in with an offer of a product, but they might be restricted. Let's say it could be because of IP, it could be because of production, it could be for a lot of different reasons. But to be able to sort of be agile and always improve on that, and really understand what their needs are is going to be very important. So really being able to always evolve and understand your partners, but also the market requirements, I think is going to be a key element of how ingredient brands will evolve in the future.
And I think that a lot of the sort of points we talk about there are actually getting more and more important as well. That sort of concept of becoming an extension of the team for brand partners. In light of the current market situation, you look at the cycling market and you look at the motorcycle market to some extent now as well. We are hearing in several different markets that there are brands that are struggling to hold on to their development teams. And so I think for ingredient technologies, it's an even more abundant opportunity than it would have been, 4 or 5 years ago to really be an attractive proposition to help prop up the R&D that is being lost within these companies.
So on all fronts, ingredient brands have to move because brands also have to move because we are living systems. The world is changing. And I think that is a struggle for many of those first generation ingredient brands, particularly those owned by the large corporations, because they were built around a specific material. They were built around one specific property. And if that world is changing, you need to move on. And at the end of the day, as a brand, you also need to have kind of an opinion and an attitude, not only a product. We're coming to the end. I have two things at the end of each session. One is almost impossible for you because you are such experts, but there is always a question. Are you currently dealing with an ingredient brand related challenge that you would like to discuss or where you would have a question?
Yeah, 100%. Just because we've been in the space for as long as we have doesn't mean that we're not finding our own challenges. I mean, one of the things that Marcus and I were chatting about this the other day, and I think one of the common challenges we've seen ourselves, it's very important as an ingredient technology and as a co-branded partner that we are out there pushing and building our brand and making a lot of marketing efforts to promote our story, tell our story, educate our consumers, etc., so that we can become sort of an extension of that marketing piece for our brands. But, not every brand is as willing to do that as we would anticipate. Some of them are, even though they're investing in what is fundamentally a premium technology, not every single one of them, would want to put in the same level of effort or take on the efforts that we want to put into the marketing side of things.
It is something that every ingredient brand comes across, I think, during the journey. Goes a little bit back to what we've discussed earlier. How committed are your brand partners to your story and to your storytelling? And I think one very good example is to really track and measure the success of those brands that are actively engaging with you by being able to show, higher sellout, a better price premium, less reductions, and other hard facts.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And yeah, I agree. I think the approach that we've kind of taken is right. Let's put our efforts into those that want to work very closely with us on this. And then let's use that as a case study to present moving forwards.
That brings me to the last point. We always also ask our guests to recommend somebody that we could invite to our show, someone who you think would have a fascinating story to share. We've got you recommended by several people, including Florian in one of the last episodes. So the bar, you set the bar very high, but maybe you have someone that you would also like to hear the story in our podcast.
We think that it'd be great to hear an invitation go out to InEmotion, the airbag company for motorcycle industry. It's been a market that's been around for a few years with mechanical airbags for motorcyclists. But now it's evolved, with various sort of algorithms, and InEmotion are really sort of driving that space. And yeah, so that's who we think, would make a real sort of interesting candidate for your podcast, Thomas.
Super. That's also really somebody new. I think we know a lot of the same people, but that would also be a new field or a new person to talk to. So thanks a lot for this recommendation. Well, I guess that was a session full of learnings for anyone who's interested in the ingredient brand, go-to-market model, brand model. Alex, thanks a lot. Marcus, so glad that you could join and share your breadth of experience, particularly in bringing technologies to life through ingredient branding. So thanks, guys, for your time and commitment to this. Any final message you want to leave with the audience, please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Thomas. Really appreciate the opportunity to be on here and share these ideas with you. And I'm sure a lot of it is stuff that you've come across in your time as well. We're just trying to compact everything with what we're doing with ReZero. So it's great to be able to share that in more detail. Marcus?
Thank you. I just want to say, I don't think anybody sets out to become an ingredient brand expert. Kind of fell into it, but I just have a real passion for it. And I think that's mainly because of the people within the industry. And sort of the ingredient brand side of things, certainly in the space that we're in, the sports industry, it's got great energy. The people are lovely to work with. And it's just a great space to be in. So thank you to you guys and thank you to everybody in the industry.
Excellent. Gentlemen, with this, I'm saying goodbye and hope to see you soon at one of the shows or at another occasion. Have a good year, 2025. All the best to you and your families.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Thomas. You too.
Wow, what an episode. It is always stimulating to catch up with such passionate people who are so intensely and also personally invested in their work. On top of that, Marcus and Alex are real serial entrepreneurs with many years and many business ventures in their pockets, and they're not stopping. We're excited to see how ReZero continues to grow in the future and hope this episode inspired you just as much as it inspired us. We'd love to hear which part stuck with you the most. Share your thoughts, insights, and any questions you might have about this episode on our Brained LinkedIn page. The link is posted in the show notes. Subscribe to the Hero Inside podcast to be sure not to miss the next episode. Until then, keep exploring, learning, and being a hero in your journey towards a better world.
This has been an episode of Hero Inside, the Ingredient Branding Podcast with Tomas Vučurović. Each episode features stories and wisdom from game-changing creators and the shapers of the world's most exciting and influential ingredient brands. To learn more about ingredient branding and Tomas's work, visit brained.co. That's BRAIND.co. Until next time.